Sam and Max kind of grew out of that idea of doing comics with my brother. Me and my kid brother would take, just take a ream of paper and you staple it together and you draw your story. And however much paper you had is how long the story was. And he would leave his stories laying around unfinished. And he actually conceived of the characters of Sam and Max detectives, and they were these kind of straight dog and rabbit detective characters. And I started finding his unfinished comics and doing a parody of his comics where the characters would forget their own names and they would, they'd mock each other and kind of over-explain everything. And it was kind of a parody of the way a kid talks when he's writing comics. And that's how their style kind of grew, and they kind of evolved over the years and kind of developed their own personalities coming off of that initial idea. So they started as a mockery of the comics of an 8-year-old. Because this year more than any, I'm talking to so many people that knew these characters when they were little, like 5 years old or 9 years old, and actually grew up knowing the characters. But somehow, there's a million characters you encounter when you're a little kid, but for whatever reason they're, connecting to these guys early on. And I always ask, what were your parents thinking? Early on when I was in art school, there was a school newspaper, and I worked on the school newspaper staff, and we needed comic strips, and I did a couple of different comic strips. I did one called Donut Driver that was about my experience delivering donuts in Northern California in the middle of the night, driving around to all the mini marts in the Sacramento area and dropping off my donuts, picking up the stale ones, and it was the donut driver as a superhero. And then at some point I decided I would do a Sam and Max strip for the school paper. So that was the first one that actually was reproduced. And I did a few other installments of it. I'd always do them the night before. It was always at the last minute trying to get it done. And years later, I had a friend, Steve Moncouse, who had published his own comic called Fish Police. And he was having some good luck with that. It was right in the, probably 2/3 into the black and white boom of comics in the 80s. And he asked me if I wanted to do my own comic book. And he was interested in Sam and Max and wanted to see what that would be like as a full story. And so I spent 4 months doing that book, the first book. It came out in 1987. I wasn't really sure how to do a comic myself. I had done some Marvel books, but I hadn't written my own comic. And that's one of my favorite panels of the DeSoto racing through the city streets for the first time. At LucasArts, the characters kind of became unofficial mascots of the company because people knew about the comic, and we would use sample animations of them for the programmers to train with, and that's what led to the first game being made. People in the company knew the characters so well that when it came time to do a new game on a really rapid schedule, it was proposed as one of the properties to do. There's probably a different audience for the adventure game at that time than there was for comics, and so even at the conventions I meet a lot of people who first found the characters through the game and then discovered the comic after that.
Okay, little buddy. On 3. Ready? 1, 1.5. 3! All right, Sonny, consider yourself pinched.
Who are these guys?
So Dan Smith was an editor at Nelvana for a long time, story editor, and he was always a champion for wanting to see this thing made into a TV show. And we managed to get together, and we actually worked together developing a story Bible for it, and we pitched it together in LA to Fox Kids, and he got these characters a lot. He understood them. and understood like what the differences are between comics and TV to kind of help make the choices of what there's certain things you're not going to do on TV, and so you do something else instead. And if you're not going to shoot guns at each other, maybe you maintain some of the weirdness of the characters instead, which is what I made. My mandate was keeping the weird quotient up to snuff. So if it couldn't be so morally questionable, maybe they're it's just the kind of randomness of it and the strangeness of the worlds and the stories that we explore.
Don't anybody move. This is a stick-up. All we want is the dough. And maybe one of those Elvis-shaped decanters. We want to drink from the neck hole of the king.
It's an interspecies holdup.
I know your voice. You're that Henderson kid.
Start scooping the cash into a plain brown bag, old man.
Giant rat guys. Weird. Interesting.
And somehow very appropriate. Shall we slap the sleeper on him and make him cry uncle?
Can't think of a reason not to.
I lived in an old barn at the time, and I would work through the fax machine, and I would get bundles of FedEx packages every day. It's like, here's 60 more pages of characters and turnarounds and things like that. And I'd be on the phone with Dan Smith for hours at a time. We just sift through all the scripts, and we'd write jokes into the scripts and change things around. And there were a few scripts I wrote myself, and just kind of keeping in touch. And I'd go up there for casting sessions from time to time, and working with the production team. They'd always go out to pool, go play pool across the street at lunch. So it was fun to go to Toronto and visit with those guys and actually, work directly with them for little stretches. But the rest of the time I was in my little barn, on the phone and working through the fax machine.
You got that right. And how? It was the stern guiding voice of the commissioner with just the right kind of hair-raising case we can wrap our overactive adrenal glands around.
Are you talking dirty?
He says there's bad trouble on the moon, Max. Let's pack up and blow this joint.
I think for hardcore comics fans, it was a kind of a tough shift because they wanted everything that they had in the comics. And what's interesting is sometimes those guys would say, wow, it's too bad you had to water down the comic for the show, but then at the same time they say, well, I can't believe they let you say that, because there'd be certain jokes that people, wow, I can't believe that joke was on TV, and that always cracked me up because I thought it was a contradiction, because at the same time you're saying it's watered down, it's still got stuff in it that's making your eyebrows go up. So that was gratifying actually to hear, and I think we try to be sensitive to what you show. You're not going to have violence, so you replace it with goofiness instead. And I think the spirit of the characters is definitely there. I think it was right on, as far as their personalities.
I love having a sub-basement of solitude with our very own genius girl to think up wildly improbable stuff for us. Like this exploding Max decoy with realistic action banner.
Death from above, death from above.
It's what I've always wanted.
Thanks, geek!
I was thinking it would be fun to have a danger room a danger room or some kind of a lab or a place where they could have, exotic things made for them. And I had a boy character called he was called the Geek. And at some point, Fox was asking if we could make room for a girl somewhere on the show, and their first request was, could we make Max a girl? And me and Dan kind of looked at each other, and I was thinking, I knew this was going to get strange, but I didn't know it would get strange so soon. And Dan pretty much said, they said, well, you won't have to ever refer to the character as a girl. And Dan was saying, well, you can't really never refer to the gender of somebody. You have to do it at some point. So the choice was made to turn the Geek into a girl, and it's just a really smart brainiac character that can, put machine guns in their headlights and things like that. And so he tried to, use her sporadically.
Hello there, young lady. Is your mommy home?
This isn't my home, it's my lab.
And my mommy didn't call you. I did.
Well, aren't we all grown up? You must be Darla Guggenheek.
Please. My friends call me the geek.
I really like They Came From Down There, where we have the zombie characters from the little village, and we have Max Salmon kind of growing sea chimps for meat. And that episode has one of my favorite lines from the series that I think Dan Smith wrote the line, and it was at one point there's a giant mutant muskie character that kind of grew out of these experiments, and they cut the top of Max's skull off, or they pop it loose, and Max says, "I didn't realize my skull was threaded for easy access," and Sam says, "Quick, press down on the medulla oblongata. $5 says he smells burnt toast."
Come on, this isn't brain surgery.
Part of the reason I think the characters have stayed around is because of the fan interest and fan projects and fans that just kind of keep the characters alive through their memories of the stuff that existed before. So I think that's a big part of it, is that it still existed for them, and even though there wasn't any new material for long stretches, that they kept it alive. I connect more to Sam. I think I'm more of a Sam personality, but I wish I was a Max. And once in a while a Max comes out, but I think I default to the Sam because I have a conscience. I always love to find these books when they're all raggedy and dog-eared, like somebody had them in their back pocket during a war, something like that. Makes me. It was loved, because there's nothing more sad than a comic that hasn't been loved. I've worked on a movie idea. I took an old game idea that I actually developed it as a game, Sam and Max Plunge Through Space, and that's one of the epic stories. It has the Statue of Liberty being stolen, made into a casino floating on an asteroid, and Sam and Max have to go and bring it back, and they get involved in all these kind of political intrigue in this weird system of planets that are all connected by cables, and then we find a kind of lost world where everyone looks like Max, and there's a doomsday machine to boot. So all that stuff is out there, and if I wanted to make a longer story, that would be one of the ones I might go revisit. Cut! Let's try that again.